Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the Blacktop. This is my backyard home gym. I love it. It's my happy place, my little lifting oasis. We are going to try to get this in before the gardeners come. So let's see if we can make that happen. You might hear some crows, you might hear some dogs, but it is what it is. We are talking about beginner snatch mistakes and how to address them. Now I have some notes. If you have questions, please shoot them in there and I'll try to get to them at the end because I really want to make sure that I cover these 5 things that I want to address. Okay, so when we're talking about beginner snatch, I'm talking about people that have never snatched a barbell before and are either training in their home gym or are at a CrossFit gym and they're kind of being thrown into the fire as far as figuring out this lift. This is an incredibly complex lift, okay? And I have a mic in. Please let me know if you can't hear it. Just kind of raise your hand or whatever. Let me know if you can't hear, but hopefully this mic is going through. Incredibly complex lift, okay? So when we talk about the importance of addressing certain things as a beginner, there are so many boxes that need to be checked before you start going into full power snatches, full snatches, even hang snatches, like a high hang, a hang, and a full snatch. Those are not really breaking down the individual components, right? Like there's so much more that needs to happen. So for today's live, I want to address assessment of range of motion and basic movement of the joints that are necessary that have to go through this range in order to accomplish a successful snatch lift, creating tension in your body so that you know exactly what needs to be tight throughout the lift, utilizing the hook grip, working, and the importance of footwork. And then the last thing is timing and breaking down the lift into its individual components and how important that is as a beginner. All right, so 5 things that we're going to address. First and foremost, we're going to talk about assessment. Okay, so when you are doing a snatch, I'm sure we've all seen the Olympic lifting or even high-level CrossFitters. There is a lot of range of motion that is necessary, a lot of mobility. So even if you are very flexible, even hypermobile, and you can get into these ranges, if you don't have control at these end ranges, you will be susceptible for injury and you might not be able to make the lift because your body is just like, dude, I don't know where we are. Like, what is happening right now? So we're going to work from the bottom up as far as assessment is concerned. Let's talk about the ankles. There needs to be a great amount of ankle range of motion in order to safely and comfortably do an overhead squat, which is basically the bottom position of a snatch, right? So you have to imagine when you come down to the overhead position of an overhead squat, right? Or to the bottom position of an overhead squat, your knees need to be able to travel forward so that your shin can have a forward deviation. What that does is it allows your hips to come under you a bit more, therefore allowing the shoulders to actually cradle that barbell over your midline, right? So if you don't have the range of motion to allow your knees to come forward comfortably and for your hips to sit down practically vertically so that your torso can be vertical, then you're putting a lot of strain on your shoulders. So let me show you what this looks like, right? So if you don't allow your ankles to come forward, what you're going to do is shoot your hips back because now you can't bring your knees forward. And now look what's happening at the shoulders, right? So a lot of times people feel like, hey, I don't have the shoulder mobility to do overhead squats or to do snatches, but it might be your ankles. So check the range of motion of your ankles. If you need help with any of these assessments, please contact me. I have a full body assessment that I can send to you and you can figure out whether you have this range of motion or not, okay? So we need the ankles to have adequate range to allow the knees to come forward. We also need the knees to be comfortable going over the toes. So if you do not feel comfortable allowing those knees to go forward, which is not dangerous, then you are going to compensate and you're going to shoot those hips back and you're going to lean forward in the chest and then you're going to have a hard time with that barbell overhead. Okay, we also need adequate range of motion in the shoulders, right? So that's a given. We need to be able to reach overhead. We need to be able to get out here. Sometimes if we are lacking range of motion in the shoulders, it actually feels pretty good to be in the snatch grip because we're not forcing the shoulder to get all the way up into full shoulder flexion or full shoulder abduction. So sometimes the snatch grip actually feels pretty comfortable. What you do need to be able to do though is kind of maintain those shoulders pulled down as you're pressing up. Okay, so the only way you can get there is by really reaching those shoulders up into your ears, then you should probably address some more of that shoulder mobility. Another range that you want to comfortably be able to get into with your shoulders is this scarecrow position, right? Can you do an upright row with your elbows up high and the bar still close to you? If you're dealing with some shoulder impingement or you have limited range or there is some tendinous issue in your shoulder and you're limited there, this is going to become a problem during the snatch and you're going to compensate. You're going to try to have that bar come out away from you a little bit. You're going to figure out a way to do it where you're relieving some of that pressure on your shoulder. You want to make sure that you can safely get into this range in order to not compensate. All right. So lastly, it's the wrists, right? So can your wrists tolerate that barbell on them, right? So now we don't want the barbell to just rest completely on the wrist. We want to make sure that we push up against it and we use some of those muscles. But if it is uncomfortable, you are going to not enjoy doing snatches. All right, so we went from the ankles all the way up to the wrist. Make sure that you assess and have adequate mobility to even do this lift. Now, what happens if you don't have the adequate mobility? You figure out a way to do it and you figure out a way to compensate, but that could set you up for disaster, right? So as athletes, we're going to figure out a way to make it work. But if you want to get good at something, you want to start practicing it well. So now the snatch is an incredibly complicated lift. Now, if you're fighting against the technique and the weight, and then also fighting against your own lack of range of motion or mobility, stability at these end ranges, then you're fighting too much, right? So you're better off working on and gaining this adequate end range mobility before throwing in all the snatch work, okay? Now there's something to be said about gaining mobility in doing the lift, but that's where breaking it down to individual components is very important. So don't just think, well, the more I do snatches, the better I'll get at positioning. There's something to be said for that, but that's definitely the long route, right? So you can work on the individual components and work on your mobility before trying to tackle something so complex as the snatch. All right, so that is assessment. Let me know if you have any questions. We're gonna move on to building tension. Okay, so the tighter you are in your body, the lighter the bar will appear. And that goes for any lift, any skill. The tighter you can maintain your body, the lighter you appear to pull-ups, to push-ups, to squats, right? So we want to make sure that you are in full control of every part of your body. Now, creating tension, I'm looking at my notes here. Creating tension, we're going to start with a basic bracing, right? So can you create that pressurized tank in your core in order to protect your back and in order to be in control of your limbs, okay? So the tighter that you can brace and the more that you can control this center of your body, the more in control you're gonna be of even your fingertips or your feet, right? So if you ever watch a gymnast, they're not just tight as hell because it's pretty. They're tight because it makes what they're doing easier, right? They are in more control of their body because they are squeezed. Okay, so we want to make sure that you know how to properly brace with or without the barbell. Okay, so can you do it at any given time? If you do not have your proper bracing pattern, you should not be snatching yet. Okay, so or doing any lifts, right? Like that's first and foremost the first thing that you need to work on anything. Okay, so proper bracing. The next thing we're going to talk about creating tension in is your upper back, right? So when you go to peel this barbell up off the floor, we got to make sure that you have control of those shoulder blades and know how to keep them pinned back, right? So if you let the barbell pull you, then the barbell's in control, not you. So you want to make sure that you are in control of the barbell, meaning get set and then keep that tension. Can you do that with just the empty PVC pipe? If you cannot, then you're not ready to move on to the barbell yet. Okay, gripping the floor. Can you create tension through the ground and starting from the ground up into your body, right? This is hugely important. You're trying to generate force from the ground. So if you don't know how to grip the floor and put force into the ground, you're not going to create much force coming up out of the ground, okay? So learn how to grip the floor. Next thing is pulling the knees out and back, or creating tension in your hamstrings, that's a train, in the posterior chain, right? So when we go to peel the barbell off the floor, can we get set? Can we create this tension in our hamstrings? Can we feel it with the empty PVC pipe? Can you keep that tension as you're moving slowly? If you cannot feel that unloaded, then you're not ready to move the barbell yet, right? Like, so there's something to be said about the barbell forcing you to create tension, but we want to make sure that you can stay safe. So you need to know how to build tension without the barbell yet, okay? All right, there we go. All right, so hook grip. There's a lot of pushback on the hook grip, especially with beginners. But let me tell you something. If you want to be good at snatching or cleaning any explosive pull, then you need to hook grip. So while you are learning the lift and using minimal weights or just using the PVC pipe, this is your opportunity to start developing tolerance in the hook grip. So now, what is the hook grip? This is you basically locking your grip into the bar so that when you tug on it, it does not come flying out of your hands, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap our thumb around the bar and then wrap our fingers over the thumb. Okay, this can be very uncomfortable starting out, but I promise you, the more comfortable you get with hook grip, the more you're gonna be like, I can't do this without it, right? So there's a couple options here. You can either, and this is a pretty large PVC pipe, so it can't really wrap my hand fully around it, but you can do your thumb under and all the fingers wrapped around, or some people like to let that thumb slip out and then it kind of just goes about like this, okay? Whatever feels most comfortable for you. Ideally, you would wrap multiple fingers around that thumb, because now you are locked in and you don't have to worry as much about your grip strength being able to hold that bar, okay? So developing the hook grip and practicing it, forcing yourself to practice it while you're developing this skill is hugely important. All right, footwork. Okay, footwork is so important. Your body needs to know exactly where it is during this lift, meaning you need to know exactly where you're jumping from and where you're landing, so that you're not just making it up as you go, and so that it's not confusing to your body because you're landing in different spots every single time, okay? So make sure that when you're developing the bottom of your snatch or your jumping position, you find the same position every single time. Ideally, this would be just underneath your hips or maybe slightly outside of your hips, not very wide. And then your landing position would be the position of most comfort at the bottom of your overhead squat, right? So you should be testing your overhead squat, making sure that you have that range of motion. Find where your feet are when you're at the bottom of the overhead squat, when you're the most comfortable, and that should be your landing position. If you feel yourself drifting too wide, then you need to break down the snatch a little bit more, drill the footwork, make sure that you have that locked in before advancing in the skill or before trying full snatches. Don't just create bad motor patterns. Make sure that you do it well, and do it well often before challenging the load or challenging the intensity. So footwork, you want to make sure that you start from that jumping position and then you just go to that landing position. Another common mistake in footwork is that we jump and we leave the ground for way too long, right? So the ground is our home base, right? So this is where we're generating force from, and this is where we're creating stability from, right? So if we're floating up in the air forever, or we're donkey kicking and going too wide, then we're not utilizing the ground, and we're leaving more pounds on the table, basically, okay? And then we're not creating enough stability. So make sure that your jump and land is just a little shuffle, right? You're just coming here and landing, okay? So drilling the footwork, working on your footwork is gonna be hugely important, and you can do this just like I did, making sure that you jump and land in the same position, or you can do this breaking down the snatch from here, making sure that your feet land in the same spot every single time. Another good trick is just to make chalk marks on the ground so that you can see when you're drilling it whether you're landing in the right spot or not, okay? So spend time working on the footwork before trying to incorporate the whole snatch. All right, last but not least, we're going to talk about timing and the individual components of the snatch and how important it is to break it down, just break it down into its simplest parts. One of the best ways I like to do that is to work the snatch from the top down, right? So in my focus program, my signature program, we don't even introduce the snatch until about 5 months in. And even then, it's with the empty PVC pipe or with the PVC pipe or just an empty bar. And it's going from the top down snatch warm up. And the reason for this is for people to get comfortable with the positioning, the mobility, test them out, is this comfortable for me, and to drill the timing and the footwork, all right? So what we do is we start from the very top with the arms locked out in your snatch grip, and you're going from the jumping position right to the landing position. All right, can you do that? The next one is from here, right? Can you do that? From the scarecrow. Can you do that, right? We really break it down and make you go through it 3 full warm-ups. We go from power snatch to parallel to, power position to parallel to bottom of the squat. It's very complex, and we do that for 3 full rounds, and we do that for 6 weeks straight before even introducing any type of load or trying to do the full snatch, okay? So the importance of this is you don't want your body to be confused while you're snatching, right? There's already so much going on. So we got to make sure that your body understands all the individual components, right? So once you get through nailing that snatch warm up with the PVC pipe or with the empty bar, then we can start introducing some more separate components, right? Can you do a drop snatch, right? Can you do that loaded? And I'm just gonna throw these words out. You can Google them if you want to, but drop snatch, we're basically drilling the fact that can you land in the same position every single time? So you got the barbell here. Can you just drop and land in the same spot and comfortably every single time? Great, let's drill that. Tall snatch, can you pull yourself under the bar so you get no dip and drive? It's just, can you pull yourself under and land? Can you do that comfortably? And can you replicate it every single time, making it look exactly the same, creating all the tension and landing with balance every single time? Snatch grip deadlifts, okay? So can you, with comfort and ease, go through that bottom position, that starting position, and can you maintain tension? Do you have the mobility? Do you have the range to do that comfortably? Break the snatch down and test yourself. Can you accomplish these individual tasks before then challenging yourself to do the whole lift, okay? It is a very, I've said it before, complicated lift. All right, guys, so we went through assessment. Do you have the range of motion and mobility, the control in order to get into these positions? Can you create tension in your body in order for you to be in control of the bar and not the bar in control of you? start working on the hook grip. Make sure that you start developing comfort and ease with that. And then footwork. Make sure that you know where you are jumping from and landing every single time so that your body has a better chance to do all the rest of the stuff that it needs to do. And then timing and individual components. Break this thing down before you even put the whole thing together. There's too much going on, and you need to make sure that you test yourself and build strength in the separate positions first. Lastly, patience is key. This is an Olympic sport. People spend decades, even longer, developing their ability to accomplish this skill. Do not think that it's just going to miraculously show up. I don't care how athletic you are. Everybody starts snatching like shit, okay? So make sure that you take the time to be patient, all right? The biggest thing that you can do is quality reps. So that's what I was saying before. Break it down into its separate parts. Make sure that you can nail those components first before trying to do the whole thing together. And then when you do start doing snatches, make sure that you stick to a weight that you can move well, that you can move. You can be snappy. You know exactly where you need to be. You're tight. The barbell is not pulling you around or, shoving you around. You're in control of the barbell. So now what happens when snatches show up in a WOD? If you have not developed the skill to do quality reps slowly or in a controlled environment, like in a strength type of environment without the high intensity added in, then you should not be throwing them into a WOD, right? What happens when we add high intensity? Technique is one of the first things to go. So if you do not have the technique of the snatch to fall back on yet, then do not do them in the WOD, because practice makes perfect. And if you're practicing shitty reps, your body is going to remember that, and you're going to build shitty motor patterns. Don't do that. The snatch is way too important. And if you do heavy snatches with the crappy muscular motor control that you were building in the WOD, it's not going to end well for you. So unless you have developed the technique of the snatch and you know that you can move that barbell the exact same way every single rep without having to think about it too much, you should swap out snatches in a WOD or in a high intensity environment for dumbbell snatches or maybe cleans, but swap it out so that you do not spend time building shitty reps or practicing shitty reps, right? We want good quality reps, okay? This is very complicated lift, and we want your body to know exactly what it needs to do, and it needs to do it well. All right, that's it for me. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can also leave questions on this IG Live. I will be posting this to my page. Like I said before, we cover this in my Focus program, which is launching again October 4th. Waitlist gets first dibs Monday on the 20th, and then this group 6 starts on October 4th. I only open it up to 5 spots, so if you are interested, this is basically everything you need to do in your first year of CrossFit, or if you've already been doing CrossFit, everything you need to go back and relearn and do well so that we minimize risk of injury. So if you want to sign up for that, head to the link in my bio and tell all your friends. Let me know if you have anything else that you want me to cover. I'm going to start going live every week talking about common problems and the solutions in order to address them when it comes to training, CrossFit, fast fitness, all the things. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.